Experimentation, exploration, and curiosity unite the arts and sciences together. Science relies heavily on method, and art uses it to a certain degree as well. As Mutanu said in the last video, there are concepts like symmetry that create a visual presence overlapping biology, physics, and artistic principles. So how are artists incorporating these overlaps into their work? How are scientists using art to help people? In this video, we'll talk a lot about different projects achieved through scientific and artistic processes. One of the first fascinating artworks we'll explore comes from Hubert Dupret. In the early 1980s, Dupret partnered up with rather unusual artists to create gold sculptures. He put caddis worms into an environment filled with gold pieces and pearls. Then he watched as the worms made cocoons out of the precious materials. There's a lot of discussion about how the worms chose certain pieces of gold, but it's interesting to see how they were able to create a cocoon out of a foreign material. There's certainly a potential for more exploration here. Speaking of potential, I've been wondering how we can use art and science to solve the current unprecedented global problems we face. Pollution, climate change, and wildlife extinction are just a few opportunities for solutions. I was reading the other day that in France, there are 800,000 Sophie the Giraffe baby toys that were sold in 2010, more than 8 times the amount of giraffes living in Africa. The fact that we have more giraffe toys than actual giraffes on this planet should really say something. While I am not the perfect environmentalist, I am convinced to make a change and spur conversations about the issues we face. So I asked Rebekah about how she's seen artists advocate for our planet.
I know a decent amount of artists that are making their art about the climate and like things we know about that and wanting to like sort of get people to change in a way. Like, you know, more and more artists are learning that like, you know, acrylic paint is actually just plastic and plastic that we've made into a liquid form. And then, you know, trying to make fashion out of garbage, I think is always very interesting. You know, we used to say reduce, reuse, recycle all the time, but we ended on recycle thinking that was the end of it. But the reuse is the more important actually aspect of that. I love right now there's sort of like inklings of a movement of like just reusing things to make art, and I think that's amazing and I think it's so cool. Working by reusing something, you get to either embed more memory into it by like, you know, this used to belong to my mother, like, you know, even though it's just a shirt and I get to make a canvas from this shirt, it's still like really interesting and impressive that way. So I feel like we get to contain more history by even doing that.
I really like what Rebekah had to say about reusing materials. We can preserve history and give richer meaning to art as we make better choices for the planet. Our conversation reminded me of a sculptural piece I made for my parents last year. As a young nerdy kid, I collected rocks and seashells. Whenever we would travel, I'd make it my mission to find the coolest, naturally occurring thing I could find. Of course, I'd never do this in a national park or protected area because we need to preserve those spaces as much as possible. But in areas where I had permission to explore, I would. So naturally, I collected a bunch of sticks, seashells, and rocks over time. At one point, I realized I had way too many items in my collection, so I made a sculpture out of it. Connected with twine, I made a custom space for my parents to hang their favorite photos with all of the sticks, seashells, and stones I'd collected from 10 years of vacations. It holds so many of our memories, and it's all done with materials I've reused. Personal stories, memories, and meaning are huge aspects of art making, and this is another way science and art can function together. In 1945, Adrian Hill wrote the book Art vs. Illness, where he documents how drawing helped him through tuberculosis. Adrian's observations created the term art therapy. While art therapy is not used primarily to heal people from physical disease, it is a great tool for emotional healing. And to this day, art therapy continues to help mental health professionals treat patients around the world.
My name is Jennifer Gillette. I am a licensed master social worker. I do private counseling, and I'm the staff social worker at the National Bone Marrow Transplant Link. And I've worked in oncology social work for the last 25 years. Art therapy is helpful when it comes to working with young children. It's a way to engage them. It is a way to teach them, especially kids that are kinesthetic learners. It's also helpful when people have a hard time understanding their own emotions. We can use different techniques to pull out information that maybe they're having difficulty processing. Art therapy can be used in helping people with a variety of disorders. There's been some studies done that have shown that the reward center of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, actually gets a sense of reward in doing art. And so it's been shown to be effective with people with addiction disorders, eating disorders, mood disorders. It's also a very effective tool in PTSD. And so art therapy can be used in a variety of ways. There's ways to tap into their subconscious. Psychology 101, they teach you that your subconscious is like under the water, like an iceberg. And so when I do art therapy with a client, based on some of the things and techniques I've learned through art therapy, it helps me know what questions to ask to take a client deeper. For example, if I have a child and I say, draw a picture of your family, and they're floating and they're not grounded, as a therapist, I would say to myself, I wonder, does that child feel like they're not grounded? And I would try to articulate a question to ask the child if they feel that way. Art therapy lets me know what questions to ask, but I never interpret the art without asking those questions because it might be different to that child. Also, things on the right side of the page often can present future, and things on the left side of the page often can represent past. And so again, that gives me a question I can ask. Or if mommy is much bigger than daddy in a family portrait and mommy's hands are really big, I might ask questions like, does mommy ever seem scary? And again, it's not a certainty. It's a matter of symbolically knowing tools to ask, to try to get to what's under the surface to take that client to the next level.
As we've discussed in this video, the combination of art and science can be used as a therapy tool, a means to tackle our pollution problem, and as a way to shed light on our natural world. This is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what's out there and the conversations happening between the artists and scientists. Next time, we'll talk about more STEAM solutions and how the artistic and scientific masterpieces connect. Until then, stay inspired, stay curious, and find the wonder in between.